Hello, well, today's lesson is going to be on wall framing basics. Now, wall framing, that is going to come after we have completed our subfloor. In other words, we put down our floor trusses and then we covered them with that OSB tongue and groove, that sheathing, and that is our subfloor. So now we have a nice level square surface to start building walls on. Now, when we talk about walls, it's super important that we understand all the terminology involved in the pieces and components of a wall. So once again, I put this diagram up here so you guys can get familiar with it. I know it's a lot of terms to learn, but again, use the sources that you have in your classroom, the mock-ups, as reference for all this, because then it gives you a real view of it and you can touch it and take a look and measure also the true components that are going to go into a wall system. So let's get into walls. We have exterior walls and we have interior walls. Your exterior walls on your house are going to be 2x6 lumber. Now this is dimensional lumber, solid wood. Again, look up at your material board and you're going to see 2x6 is going to measure 1.5 inches thick by 5.5 inches wide. Again, several reasons for it, but one of the big reasons right now is the 2x6 wall obviously is bigger than a 2x4, so it allows us to put more insulation in the wall. So what we do, we get a more comfortable house, if you will. It actually stays cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter, so you keep the heat in and the cold out, and vice versa then in the summer. Now, 2x4 walls we're typically going to see on the interior of the house because, again, we're not going to have any exposure to the elements on your exterior walls. So typically you're going to be framing all your interior walls with 2x4s, exterior walls with 2x6s. There will be some exceptions. For instance, in a bathroom, if we have to put plumbing in the wall and we need a thicker wall, well, we might go with a 2x6 wall. Or if we need for sound separation. These are exceptions. And again, I really emphasize that you refer back to the plans and follow the plans carefully because they're always going to call out as to whether or not you need a 2x4 or 2x6 wall. All right, great. Now let's get into what we call the layout of the wall. When we start laying out a wall, we're talking about the spacing of the studs, the king studs. We're talking about where we're placing the top plates and the bottom plates. Now, top plate and bottom plate, once again, refer to your mock-ups. These are going to create a wall that's either going to be straight or bowed. It's really important that you basically go through your pile of lumber and select the straightest lumber for that, because this is going to dictate how straight your house is and how square your corners are. It basically establishes how square and level everything is in a house. So your plates are incredibly important. You're going to select the straightest lumber for your plates. You're also going to select an appropriate size. What I mean by that is if you need a plate that's 10 feet long, try to select a plate that is exactly 10 feet. You might have to take a 12-foot piece of material and cut it down, but try to avoid taking very long pieces like a 16. Or if you had an 8-foot plate, don't grab a 12-foot plate and cut it down. Look for an 8 or a 10. Bottom line is try to get lumber that's appropriately sized to the material that you're going to be cutting. Always try to be as efficient as you possibly can when you're selecting materials. So back to our layout. As you can see, I would just want to introduce you here to the stud placement. You're going to find there's a reoccurring term called on center, OC, and pretty much I'm always going to use that abbreviation from here on out. On center, we just briefly touched on it, that the studs from the center of the stud to the center of the stud is going to be 16 inches. That also means that obviously from the front end of the stud to the front end of this stud is going to be 16 inches. But it's critical we lay our studs out like that. It's really important because we're going to start putting sheet goods. We're going to get into that when we start getting into later videos. We put sheet goods on top of this wall to help stabilize it and also give it a whole lot more structure and prevention from wind, rain, and snow and things like that. And it also helps carry our exterior components as well. So it's really important that we have the placement correct. And again, we're going to go with 16 inches on center. Now, when we're starting to talk about laying our walls out and all our materials are cut, it's really important we look for imperfections in the wood. When I'm talking about imperfections, there's a tremendous amount. The one we're going to look for is crown. But you guys, when you get out in there and you start looking around lumber that's been sitting around, you're going to see it's literally going to twist. Looks like a piece of licorice. You can actually twist. It actually will twist. We want to avoid it if it's that bad. But most wood is going to have a crown to it. That's where it actually bows up. We want to try to keep this crown facing up, especially when we put our walls together. So you can see this wall is together. I have a bottom plate, I have a top plate. All the crowns on this wall are facing in the same direction, and that is up. The reason for that is it prevents our walls from getting wavy. If we keep all the crowns the same, it's going to stay straighter, or it is straighter. Now, can you picture if you just flip-flop these crowns, it would become very wavy. It would actually accentuate all the imperfections that you have in the wood, and your walls would be really, really wavy. So by crowning all the wood up, and standing our walls with the crown in the same direction, we prefer to put the crown to the outside of the wall when we stand it up. It allows us to get straighter walls. So, kind of recapping this, we're going to get our top plate, our bottom plate. They're going to be the best lumber we can find. We're going to get our king studs. We're going to find where the crown is. We're going to place them then in our wall on layout, 16 inches on center, which I'm going to show you on the next video how we actually mark these things. And then we are going to either nail it together or screw it together. That's the basics of putting a wall together. Now, this is a really good pictorial, I think, for showing you about the 16 inches on center. You're going to see when I start doing my framing layouts, I always start here and I will go 16 3/4. And the reason I go 16 3/4 is because a stud, a 2x4, measures 1.5 inches. So half of that is 3/4. So if I took off 3/4 from my 16 3/4, I'm back to 16. You will see it's a lot easier to do it that way as opposed to try to line the stud up and hold it by hand and mark a center line. We're going to mark front lines. And again, I'm going to go into that in great detail. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up on what this is going to look like as far as layout. This is referred to 16 inches on center layout. Now, there will be different layouts you'll encounter in your time. You're going to get into 16s, 19.2s, and 24-inch on center layouts. But I'd say 16 is by far the most common layouts that we use. The other one you're going to see is when we do our roof trusses are going to be 24 inches on center. So that is a rundown on the basics of wall framing. The next video up is going to be framing part 2, and I'm going to elaborate on it. So that's it. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.